Hey everybody, welcome back to the News Desk. Paul, Maria, Rich, and BDM hanging out with you here. And we're going to do one of my favorite segments all weekend, the Draft Round Table. So we had a featured pod this morning, but how did the decks turn out for every seat at that pod? We're going to find out today. All right, so let's take a look at our table this morning and see where the players were sitting and in what order they were passing to each other, that kind of thing. And we're going to kick things off with Yoshihiko Ikawa. There you see him kind of on the top left of your screen there. Let's take a look at his Pack 1, Pick 1. What did he open? Taking a look here, what could it be? He took something that might be a little unconventional. A lot of players saying stay away from red. Clamor Shaman was Pack 1, Pick 1 for Yoshihiko. Following that up with a Gruul card comes next, Sunder Shaman. And pick number 3 stays the course in Gruul. Savage Smash is the pickup there. Let's take a look at his entire deck and how this thing went for him. Pretty solid Gruul deck from the looks of it, although not a guild. A lot of players came into this weekend wanting to draft. Paul, what do you make of this?
No, this deck looks like a very solid Gruul deck. I mean, he's got the combat tricks. He's got a nice curve. He's got 3 copies of Clamor Shaman in the deck, so it's going to be nearly impossible for opponents to block.
I love it. I love it.
So this deck looks very solid. I mean, and if I were to predict, this looks like a 2-1 deck to me.
Which you have correctly predicted. It was a 2-1 draft. It's worth saying, Brian, because you've done 1,000 of these things. On day 2, in the top pod, and around the day 2 pods, it doesn't work exactly like your FNM draft. You don't always end up with 1-3-0, 3-2-1s, 3-1-2s, and an 0-3 because people don't start at 0-0, for want of a better term.
There were only 2 8-0 players overnight. They meet in round 1, so at some point a player who is 9-0 is going to be playing someone else who is 8-1. And that's going to end up possibly
constantly
mixing up the records in the draft
staircase
pod.
of it, right? Yeah. Okay. So 2-1 for Yoshihiko Ikawa with, everyone seems to think, a perfectly fine deck. Next round the table is Reed Duke. Now, we, of course, started our draft coverage with Reed. So if you've been with us all morning, you will have seen how it went. But for those of you just joining us, welcome along. Let's take a look at his first few picks. So he looks there, and it turns out that you can just pick the rare sometimes. That turns out to be Sphinx of Foresight. So double blue, the commitment so far. On we go to pick number 2. Now, are there blue cards? Well, there's like Depose, Deploy around, the Prying Eyes. Well, okay. Quench, you're probably not going to pick that. What does he do? He actually goes with Depose, Deploy. And at that point, Brian, we're already starting to feel pretty Azorius.
And we've seen the players from that KMC Genesis Ultimate Guard playtesting house this week love Azorius nonsense.
Okay.
Right? They love that deck. We've seen them time and time again. You got a chance to see John Finkel playing that deck in the feature match area over the course of these last 3 rounds, and that's something that these guys are predisposed to doing.
Okay, so pick number 3. Let's take a look. So already we're heading, we think, Azorius fashion. Is that going to continue? It is. It's common. It's Arresta's Admonition. Let's take a look at the final deck. And Brian, I want to make clear that that word nonsense has multiple meanings, because later we're going to see another deck that I would describe as nonsense, meaning it really doesn't work and you shouldn't try it at home. This nonsense is the best kind of nonsense.
It's my favorite kind of nonsense. Anytime you are cycling through your deck and then resetting it and like building up this AI for your deck where it's just, all the lands are getting into play and you just have all these good cards that you keep shuffling in with Clear the Mind. That's what I love. This is not that deck. This ended up being more of a blue-white Flyers deck for Reed, but, it's nonsense in that you just won't die.
Right. And he did not die at any point in the draft. Our 3-0 drafter this morning on table 1 was indeed Reed Duke.
It's worth noting, by the way, that at the end of Pack 1, it looks like he drafted Azorius early and ended up with Azorius in the end, but it was actually a much more winding route. If you rewatch the draft, he looks like really bad Simic at the end of Pack 1. He's got blue cards and he's got green cards, but no blue-green cards. And it was not really clear where his draft was going. There were a lot of worried people in the back room watching that draft like, oh no, this isn't going that well. And then Sphinx of New Prov came, and then another Sphinx of New Prov, and Sphinx of Old Prov by the time the third one got to him.
Sphinx of Improv?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, who's next, Maria?
All right, Autumn Burchett is the next seat around our table. There's a look. Yoshihiko Ikawa's deck was Gruul. Reed Duke's deck was Azorius. What did Autumn open up the draft with? Let's take a look at pack 1, pick 1. And this, not really a straightforward pick, kind of a tough pack here. In the end, they go with Essence Capture, which I think is a super interesting pick, Paul.
Yeah, I think Essence Capture, I think oftentimes, especially in weak packs like this, if it's close, you kind of prefer going with the monocolored option. And Autumn was also talking about how they really preferred being blue if possible. So if anything was close, they were going to go with the blue card. And Essence Capture, if you are a blue deck, is a very strong card. You definitely don't want to put it on your Adapt creatures, however, as that will turn that effect
Unless
off.
it's a Terramander and constructed.
Right, but it's certainly a strong option to take in the first pack.
All right, let's move along to pick number 2 here. It ended up being Mortify, a pretty strong removal spell. And then pick number 3, a card that I like to play with a little bit in Standard, Priest of Forgotten Gods. Let's take a look at Autumn's final deck here. Ended up solidly Orzhov and solidly with a 2-1 finish.
Yeah, and came perfectly happy, felt that they were ahead at 2-0, and the fact that they've lost to Reed in the final round, not really a concern. 2-1, very happy to escape there. Michael Banda is up next, one of our 2 overnight leaders. And he opened up. There you see him round the table, 1 round from Autumn Burchett. And Banda is going to open actually a pretty easy choice because, oh, look, that's Mythic. That's a Doving Grand
nice.
MBN. Thank you so much. So where does he go after that? Let's look at pack 2. This time it's going to be Applied Biomancy, top left, you see there, into Simic, potentially. So we've got 3 colors going on. And then pick number 3 is Combine Guildmage. Well, that's solidly Simic. Let's see how the final deck ends up.
Surprise!
And wait. So,
It's Esper Surprise.
yeah.
Is that the next cookie you're making
Oh,
for
yes,
us, PDM?
absolutely.
Okay.
We're like creating these whole new archetypes. Really bad Simic, Azorius nonsense, you just don't die. And what's this one called?
Esper Surprise.
Okay, good.
I was
Don't
going to call
draft-
it Esper Bad Cards, but that's
He called it Esper Blocking. When I talked to him, he said, my deck is very good at blocking.
Yeah.
I
That's
have some
something.
way to win with the Night Arbiter, but, it's a little bit of, I got to do a little bit of hard work and maybe get a tiny bit lucky along the way, as we saw in that last match where Peter Glogowski literally did the comedic conk on the forehead when he kind of mishandled a big turn with his gate Colossus.
All right, so Banda comes out at 2-1. We're halfway around the table. Who's next?
All right, Han Yi is our next player. We're going to take a look at. There he is, right next to Michael Banda. Let's take a look at his pack 1, pick 1. Ill-Gotten Inheritance was his choice out of this pack, which I think is pretty surprising. And I'm not alone from the reactions at this table.
Shall we go with Bold?
Bold, a bold choice, a bold choice. I
That's
mean, the
one
card
word.
can be good. All right, let's move ahead here. Chillbringer is pick number 2, which everybody loves this card in the format.
Who doesn't
and
want to be Demir?
I mean, if you can make it happen. Pick number 3. This is also a little bit surprising. Get ready. Gravelhide Goblin.
Wow.
Okay.
I
Well,
don't understand, but let's take a look at what he built.
Yeah, so he was black pick 1, blue pick 2, red pick 3. He ends up base Simic, but with red cards and a bit of black up the top end.
For the captive
so
audience.
wait, Captive Audience
Yeah.
is on a double splash. Gravelhide Goblin is splash, and it's a
Why would you-
2-drop.
So one of the
Splash
things,
that.
again, one of the things we don't get to see on these graphics for the decks is the mana base. And we don't know how many guild gates a player ends up with.
I'm still not playing Gravelhide Goblin.
Right.
Excellent point, Maria. I have no rebuttal.
All right, he went 2-1 with that deck.
Well,
2-1.
and
So
I take it back. I have a rebuttal. He went 2-1.
When you looked at that 2-mana part of the curve, we didn't point out there was a Hydra Crisis in there. So that
That's
goes
true.
a long
Okay.
way.
That's
That
true.
by itself can get you 2 wins.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
absolutely.
All right. Rob Pizanno was up next. Rob Pizanno opens up here. You see on the table there, down at the bottom in the center. Now, he opens up a very, very nice card indeed. Says I, biased, obviously. Kaya's Wrath. Double white, double black. Okay. Next, it's going to be another rare. It's going to be Tome of the Guild Pact up next. And then third, pretty straightforward card in Summary Judgment. Brace for impact. Here comes the deck.
Oh, Oh, no.
So, yeah, so Rob was the guy I was not talking to during build as he tried to Einstein his way to a mana base that accommodated everything he was doing. Remember I said there were like 10 black sources, 9 white sources, 8 blue sources, 6 red sources, and so on.
That's where all the get the points went, too, in the draft.
Yeah.
4 copies.
This is 0-3, Brian.
Yeah, and he was 8-0 overnight. So
which is actually the best news for him.
Right.
Because
True.
8-3, Destiny absolutely in his own hands. Now he's going back into a format that he has not lost in.
There may be other factors here, but one of the interesting things before the draft yesterday was listening to 2 pro players talk. I don't remember who they were specifically, but they were debating Kaya's Wrath versus another Orzhov card because in the featured draft pod, deck lists are revealed. And a card like Kaya's Wrath is just
goes down in value. You're never going to get your opponent, overextending into that unless there's some really, unusual circumstances. And so, the expected value of a Wrath maybe goes down a little bit. But that's not necessarily why we're talking about 0-3, but I just wanted to make that point. Mm-hmm.
Sure. Let's continue our way around the table. This time, Petter Sohurik. Let's take a look at his Pack 1 Pick 1, and he might agree with Han Yi on some of his card rankings because he also takes Ill-Gotten Inheritance, Pack 1 Pick 1. Moving on, we're going to stick with Orzhov, Consecrate Consume. Didn't want a second Ill-Gotten Inheritance. I mean, I feel like if you pick one, you got to pick 2. And moving on to pick number 3, Lawmage's Binding, which we can all agree is an excellent card. What happened in the end of the draft? Let's take a look at his deck. All right, so this is pretty solidly Esper. If you had to guess the record of this deck, what would you say, Paul?
Well, it's really hard to tell without actually looking at the mana base because it looks like it's solidly 3 colors.
Cry of the Carnarians.
Yeah, it looks like it's solidly 3 colors. This looks like somewhere between a 2-1 and a 1-2 would be my guess.
I would have this on a 1-2.
0-3. How about that?
A second 0-3 at the table next to each other as well. So Pizanno and Sohurik next to each other in the draft. 0-3. But that brings us to Piotr Glogowski, the last player around the table, as you can see there. And I love the start to this draft. I got to be honest, this really appeals to me. So he opens up. Here we are, and let's have a look around. Some nice commons. Yeah, uncommon. All right, fine. I'm going to take this rare. It's called Tome of the Guild Pact, which is what?
I love it.
Wait. Now this is a card that gives you some kind of direction. If you're not now, of course, Piotr Glogowski knows what he's doing, but if you don't, that card has a real direction on it. It says multicolored is good. Let's see what pick 2 brings. Anything there?
Oh,
look at that.
One.
It's a Tome of the Guild Pact. And at that point, I would feel, okay, I think I know what the plan is. Let's look at pick 3. And this time, it's an Azorius Guildgate. So,
I guess it makes sense.
Brian, you know about the fundamentals of drafting.
Yeah, allegedly.
So if someone says, how's your draft? And you start with, so your first 3 picks.
Here's the thing. Anytime anyone asks you that question, how's it going, and you start with the word so, it means badly.
It's bad.
Okay, right. Are there any creatures in your first 3 picks?
No.
Any removal in your first 3 picks? No. Any card draw in your first 3 picks?
Kind of.
No.
Kind of.
Anything that impacts the board in any coherent way? No. What did you pick? Oh, I was trying to collect basic lands for my decks at home. That's the only other time. I just can't imagine a deck that opens like this.
What I think is interesting is he passed Gate Colossus.
Yes.
With his first overall pick of the draft, and then ended up actually, when we look at his deck, with 2 of them.
Yeah, let's put up the full list then for you. Sorry, we got a little way laid there with those first 3 picks. This is what he's ended up.
Wow.
It's kind of base Gruul, but there's sort of the Simic at the 2 drops. It is worth saying we don't have the mana base here.
He had about 10 gates in this deck.
Yes, he was seriously on the
I've got to say,
gate path.
most of his cards draw him a card off those tomes. That's something. Like his creatures at 3, they might not be spectacular, but if you're drawing a card off them, they're certainly a lot better.
Yeah, the tome kind of strikes me as the type of card where you get it kind of late, and then your deck, you're not intentionally trying to do the thing, and it just kind of settles into it that way. So this was that was a little bit surprising, but yeah, I like the Gate Colossuses in his deck.
All right, so Glogowski ends up.
And he also had a
Gates
Gates Ablaze, correct?
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that wraps up our draft coverage here. That's our draft round table. From now on, it's standard all the way. But when we come back after the break, we're going to get into our pro panel. We brought in Palavida Domodorosa, Brad Nelson, and Alexander Haynes to talk about a whole host of great stuff with Maria. Don't go anywhere. Pro Tour coverage here at Mythic Championship Cleveland continues after this.
Nice save.